call the St. Paul City Council to order. Roll call.
Ballinger.
Here.
Jalali.
Here.
Naker.
Here.
Prince.
Here.
Tolbert.
Here.
Yang.
Here.
Council President Brenmon.
Here.
7 present, no one absent.
If you would like, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Folks, it's nice to see so many people in the chamber. Sometimes it's quiet and lonely in here, so welcome and thank you for being here. I wanted to just let folks know if you are here for items number 33 or 39 pertaining to the downtown district expansion, so you are aware, the intention of Ms. Naker is to hold open the public hearing, but lay the matter over till next week. So if you would not, or if you would prefer not to wait through the other items on this agenda, that will be the intention. The public hearing is still available to you today, but the action, the intention would be to lay the matter over for 1 week and have our public hearing again next week. So you have an option to move along if you are in a rush or have other things you need to attend to today.
Consent agenda items 5 through 25 are before you for your consideration.
All right. On consent, I understand we are taking item 25 for separate consideration. Is there anything else that should come off consent? All right, seeing none, Ms. Jalali moves consent. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The consent agenda is adopted as amended. Item 25 is Resolution 23-1094, ordering a special election to be held on November 5th, 2024, to add a ballot question on whether the city should create a dedicated fund for subsidies for children's early care and education through a property tax levy.
Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. I am truly honored to be introducing this resolution today in partnership with Councilmember Yang. This resolution is about one basic but powerful idea, which is that the best thing we can do to ensure a healthy, thriving, prosperous, equitable St. Paul is to invest in our young children. We know when kids attend quality early learning programs, they do better in school and in life. We know that when parents can count on reliable childcare, they can get to work and their employers can count on them. We know Minnesota is the 4th most expensive state in the nation for childcare, and so many of our families are struggling, in particular our families of color and our low-income families. We know that babies should not be on wait lists. And we know that we can do something about it. This resolution gives St. Paul voters the chance to decide if we should collectively pay a little more, less than 50 cents a day, so that childcare and early learning are affordable for St. Paul kids and families, and so that childcare providers have the capacity to expand their capacity to serve more children and pay their workers a thriving wage. I really want to thank all of my colleagues who have supported getting the resolution to this point and all of your feedback on it along the way. I'm very grateful to the members of the Early Learning Legislative Advisory Committee that this council appointed that recommended that we take this action in March. Thank you to the St. Paul Children's Collaborative, which produced the initial report on this way back in 2017. And most importantly, thank you to the hundreds of parents, childcare providers, children, and community members who have raised your voices over the last 7 years and dedicated your time and energy to this effort.
Thank you. Any other comments? Ms. Jalali.
Thank you. I am going to speak a little bit about my work on the committee and then my position on this item. But I would first like to start by saying I share the gratitude for the members of the Early Learning Legislative Advisory Committee that came together to help us think through how could we as a city meet the goal of ending the inequities in childcare that we know are disproportionate by race and income, and that have plenty of research to support that investing in childcare is important and crucial and also underfunded. Through that process, I appreciated the chance to learn more about how are these needs being met currently, what is broken within that, and what role can and should the city play in addressing it. I am really grateful to see that in the resolution we're voting on today, much of the work of that committee has been reflected, and that as we pursue this idea, we are seeing evolutions, even in previous proposals of this concept, like valuing accountability and transparency through recommending that any type of early learning initiative be housed within the city of St. Paul, shifting the conversation toward expanding capacity. Right now, even if every child in the city had the resources to get to a childcare provider, it would be hard to have enough spots for everyone. So that obviously raises huge questions about the workforce that we're asking to do this very important work, and then how we're currently serving people in this network of different providers that are either licensed or unlicensed, formal or informal. And a lot of that work and thoughtfulness is reflected in the resolution. The question that this item raises is, what role should the council play, if any, in raising funds? And what this action is doing today is it's ordering a special election for a 10-year fixed and recurring property tax levy. This is not an action that I can support, or a forum that I can support for raising funds for this. I believe that what we should be doing is using our annual budget authority, which currently exists and does not require a forum like an election, to be doing things like improving the inequities in existing early learning programs that the city already has, looking at ways that we can partner with Ramsey County and or St. Paul Public Schools so that existing programs that exist there can be better administered, and other means that are more flexible, annually occurring, and scale up the idea over time. I am genuinely concerned about the prospect of creating this forum and pursuing this route to raise funds for a problem that we all agree needs to have a solution, and that the legislature has acted recently to take serious action on. We have members of our state delegation that are at the White House today representing the state of Minnesota, recognizing Minnesota's recent action on childcare. Having said that, those inequities still remained, and I'm committed to exploring ways to taking up the city's part in that. But this method is simply one that I just cannot support, and I'm going to be voting no. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other thoughts? Ms. Yang?
Thanks, Council President. I am very proud to be a co-sponsor to this resolution, and I first want to share that I dream of a dignified life for all families and dream of a world where families don't have to struggle to get through the next day, the next week, and the next month. And what I have heard over and over in our work around early learning is how that is a reality for many families. And that is a reality for me too, as a new mom. I have a 1-year-old son at home, and trying to find childcare is I would say one of the hardest tasks I have ever had to hold. But what I am so proud of is having a family who is willing to come in and support me even during the toughest times when my son is sick, even like today. And so, sometimes when it doesn't work out, I'm just gonna have to figure things out, maybe even take a day off. And so I know that this is something that so many families are going through, and I'm really, really inspired by initiatives that other cities have done, similar to what we are trying to accomplish here in St. Paul, where they are able to maybe even if not fully close the gap for service and early learning, they are able to get there much more closer than we are in St. Paul, and I strive for us to get there. I'm also so grateful to all of the community leaders, the organizations, Councilmember Naker and Councilmember Jalali for the time that we spent together on the Early Learning Committee to even put together a skeleton for what an early learning program in St. Paul can look like. And so to me, really leaning onto that work that we did as a collective is very important. I also know and acknowledge that there is still so much work for us to do from now until the ballot initiative for next year in 2024, and that is what I am committed to. And so I wanted to share that and express full gratitude for the folks who have brought us to this point. It is for families, it is for our littlest ones, and it's to make sure that we do create an ecosystem in St. Paul where families can thrive, and we know how important childcare is. And so I'm proud to be a part of a collective where we are working to figure things out, which is a huge model that I carry in all of my work. So with that, I hope that this ballot meets our voters and that St. Paul voters are just as impassioned about creating a system that is going to help us raise the next generation.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Ms. Prince?
Yes, I will be supporting this resolution. I've been very supportive of this work over the last several years, and as has been stated by my colleagues, I'm grateful to the work of the Legislative Advisory Committee. I think it gave us a really good foundation for this next step. The reason I'm concerned about this, other than the kind of obvious ones of having a childcare desert on the east side, I have been hearing and reading very compelling messages from dozens of well-known economists around the country who tell us that early childhood education is the single best economic development investment a city can make for our children, for their working parents, and for our future workforce, and ultimately the success of our St. Paul economy. Since joining the council in 2016, I have focused a lot on the needs of kids in my part of town, including reopening rec centers that had been sheltered for 8 years, and improving the programming at rec centers and ensuring that there are free and low-cost and excellent programs for our families to take advantage of. But all that said, this initiative gets at the most profound needs of 0 to 5-year-olds to be able to start school ready to be successful. And to Ms. Jalali's point about, I believe that it's depending on how the elections go, that we stand a very good chance of seeing larger investments from the federal and state government for this very thing. And when that happens, the formula could be readjusted. So I do think that there's a high likelihood of greater investments if things go the right way. And finally, I really appreciate that the language of the ballot question that is on the resolution today is very thorough and very transparent. When people vote for this or against it, they will know exactly what they're voting for in terms of the increases in their property taxes going forward. So on that basis, I will be voting yes.
Great. Other thoughts? And I'll just add more of on a housekeeping note perhaps, but item number 28 on our agenda today is discussing a ballot initiative that will take place this year in 2023. And I truly appreciate the leadership on the early learning initiative to hold back on this question for a year and let us focus on moving that sales tax over the finish line. Which also gives another year of time to adjust, recognize the funds that have come in from other sources, and give us time to work on language, and et cetera. So I appreciate the separation here. Right now, I know that we're all very focused on the sales tax and the issues that face us with our streets and our parks. And I do appreciate the additional year and a half of time that we have to consider this item, and I appreciate that very much. So I will also be in support today. Any other thoughts before we go to a vote? All right. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
5 in favor, 2 opposed, being council members Ballinger and Jalali. The resolution is adopted. Item 26 is resolution public hearing 23-183, approving the application of Wabasha Brewing Company for a sound level variance in order to present amplified sound on Saturdays, July 22nd and 29th, August 5th, 12th, and 19th at 429 Wabasha Street North. The public hearing was closed on July 12th.
Ms. Anker.
Thanks, Council President. I appreciate my colleagues' willingness to give me some time to work on this item over the last week, and I appreciate the Department of Safety and Inspections and City Attorney's Office work on this as well. There's a version 2 in Legistar that I would like to move that pares down the hours for the sound level variance to just the time that we heard from the applicant that they need, and also lowers the upper level limit of the decibel level so that it's more aligned with what they also need. There's also a provision in there for the sound level variance to be revoked if there are enough substantiated complaints that there's a violation of the variance by the Department of Safety and Inspection. So I wanted to make these changes to respond to what I heard from the neighbors who were concerned, and also to allow this business to move forward with their events starting this Saturday. So I move version 2.
All right, so there's a motion on version 2 with some adjustments. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Prince?
Yeah, and so that's the hours are 3 to 8, and then the decibel level was
75.
75. Thanks. I think that's a really good solution. So I will be voting in support.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted as amended. Item 27 is Resolution 23-1040, directing the Department of Safety and Inspections as to how to proceed with the request of licensee Majid Natishun, doing business as MJ Market, to surrender the tobacco shop license for the premises located at 922 Thomas Avenue West.
Ms. Scarda, welcome.
Council President Brenmo and council members, I am planning on using the overhead projector. So I will start and hopefully it will come up as we're talking. Teresa Scarda on behalf of the Department of Safety and Inspections. The resolution before you is a little different than we normally see. We see one of these every once in a while. But on January 31st, 2023, the tobacco shop license held by MJ Market for the location at 922 Thomas was the subject of a notice of violation and request for revocation after a complaint inspection conducted by the inspectors from the Department of Safety and Inspections on January 9th, 2023, resulted in the discovery of a large volume of prohibited flavored products and unstamped cigarettes hidden in boxes and tubs behind a drawer, under a footboard, at the base of the sales counter. The department based its recommendation for the presumptive penalty of revocation on a prior complaint-based inspection that happened on May 6, 2022, that resulted in the discovery of prohibited flavored products also. That concluded with the suspension, a 10-day suspension of the license held by licensee through resolution public hearing 2345. And this notice, under this notice, the licensee had asked for a public administrative hearing. That was set. However, on June 20th, 23, the licensee, through his attorney, requested that the administrative hearing be canceled and indicated that he would like to address City Council, admit the violation, and request that he be allowed to surrender his license so that he can sell the licensed premises, and the ability for the next owner, that ability to have the tobacco license would remain. So essentially the lesser penalty of allowing surrender is, it's a lesser penalty under the matrix, right? It's something different than the requested or required revocation. And so the department understands that only City Council has the authority to impose these types of penalties or scale back penalties when we go above the standard dollar matrix penalty. So the resolution before you has a couple of choices. There's an or at the end. Be it resolved that the City Council, after consideration of the licensee's request, imposes the presumptive penalty of revocation of the tobacco shop license held by licensee for the licensed premises, or resolved that the City Council, after consideration of the licensee's request, directs the department to accept the surrender of the tobacco shop license held by licensee for the licensed premises. And it looks like the projector is working, so I just want to show a few of the photos so you get an idea of kind of what was found and gives you some context. So this is the sales counter here. Here are some items. You can see that the drawer is open and that there's items down there. Here's another angle that shows the picture better. Here are cigarettes without tax stamps, and here's kind of an overall photo. And that is it. If you have no questions, I will
Ms.
sit down.
Scarda, I have a question for you. I don't believe I've heard of such a thing where a business is, caught in multiple times, and this is the pictures that you're just sharing with us, and they're asking, instead of a revocation, that they surrender it so that they can turn around and sell it to the next owner of the business. Is that what you're suggesting?
Council President Brenmoen, yes, that is what I'm suggesting, and it has been a while. One of the cases where a licensee was allowed to surrender a license, within my memory, includes hot rods. And I think Johnny Babies was another, where the license, not tobacco related, mind you, but where a licensee had worked their way up through the penalty matrix to revocation and said, hey, we would like to sell it, we'd like to keep our license. Sometimes the council has granted those and sometimes they haven't, is my understanding historically.
But those examples aren't the tobacco license or other examples?
Absolutely.
Got you. All right.
I don't know of a tobacco license.
Yeah, I was
where
going to say,
has
this
happened.
is quite unusual. Ms. Prince?
And I'm curious, is the licensee both the owner of the building and the business?
Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Prince, my understanding is that the licensee owns the bricks and mortar as well. However, I believe the attorney for licensee is here and can confirm that.
Okay. All right, Ms. Snaker?
Thanks, Council President. Ms. Garda, I know it's the case with a liquor license that if we revoke the license, then that there can't be another license on that premise for another 15 years. Is that also the case with a tobacco license?
Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Naker, while the period itself is shorter, it's 5 years, the practical, and I think Council President Brenmo has pointed this out a few times, the practical effect of lowering the number of licenses we issue is that there most likely would not be another tobacco shop license issued for this location.
Thank you.
Ms. Prince?
So if I'm understanding this right, the rescission allows the business owner to keep that license alive, or does it do away with the 5-year period? He gets to get around the 5-year exclusion from having a tobacco license in that building.
Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Prince, I believe practically what would happen is the licensee then would be able to sell the business, and the license, there wouldn't be a 5-year, correct? But he wouldn't be getting around it because another licensee would be stepping into the shoes.
So after significant violations, we're giving him an out on our ordinance.
If that is, Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Prince, if that is the decision the council makes, that would be the practical result.
Well, and that's what I'm hearing, and obviously this has to be a council decision, but this happened in my ward. The landlord is not the business owner, and the building cannot have a license in it for 5 years, and probably never. But I feel like the use of this little provision is, at least in recent history, would be unfair to the intent of our ordinance and also the way we have upheld it.
I appreciate that and agree. We have, my understanding is that the licensee's attorney would like to speak on behalf of the licensee, and we do have allocated 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes for that.
He is here.
Good afternoon. Couple things right off the bat. The licensee does not own the building. He leases.
Before you get going, could you please introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Craig Boyning on behalf of MJ Market.
Thank you.
The licensee does not own the building. He does lease it. The issue that we are asking for is what Ms. Garda said, was a surrender notwithstanding revocation. I think that there needs to be a little bit of factual information put into the record about the violations themselves. There's been some comment about multiple violations. There was a violation on August 3rd, and I'm reading right now from the notice of revocation from licensing. On August 3rd, 2021, there was a a youth compliance check that was failed. They paid the penalty, so first violation under the penalty matrices of the 32410B2. On May 6th, there was a violation alleged that was litigated and was resolved that the violation actually was not considered a second violation. While that was pending, on January 9th, the department inspectors came in for another compliance check, and the compliance check was they had apparently had a report that there was a selling tobacco to youth. When they went in and tried to buy tobacco, flavored tobacco, Newport cigarettes in particular, they were the person that was running the store at the time did not sell. The investigators then went back outside and came back in and said, we're here for more of a compliance check. Would you mind if we investigated or searched your store? At which point they began a search of the facility. So to the extent that there are multiple violations, we're talking about a second violation. We have agreed and that's where we're going with the revocation, and we're not going to contest that here, not for the least of which is it really isn't an ALJ type of decision. We're kind of outside the box there. If we were going to go after an illegal search and seizure, we'd have to be coming through the civil court systems. So in perspective, we're talking about a second violation when they came back in to the store and after passing a compliance check and then went searching through the store. That being said, we're admitting to the second violation. That's on record. And where we're going here is, I'm just trying to kind of put it in context to a certain extent. This isn't just about the licensee. We've got. I don't believe respectfully that this can be put in a vacuum. We've got a landlord who is going to be taking a large financial burden on. We've got a new owner who has passed everything as far as licensing that isn't going to be, allowed into the facility if he can't sell the product. So in a nutshell, it would be my request that this court that takes all that into consideration, especially the fact that there haven't been multiple violations. There's been two. But I just want to have on record here that the inspectors did not find a violation when they first went in there. They came back in, understanding what happened, and I'm not downplaying
Sir,
that.
I do need you to wrap up.
I'm
been trying to
sorry.
signal to you for a few
I'm
minutes.
sorry.
Yeah. I think we understand what your ask is and the facts around the case, and we do have the information in the record in front of
Thank
us
you.
as well. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Prince Ms. Ballinger would move to close the public hearing. Would move to, never mind. Would just sit there and look good. Okay, so Mr. Ballinger.
I'd like to lay this over for 2 weeks so I can kind of get a better look at what else happened. I'm just hearing of it and seeing it here.
Okay. Okay. All right, so there's a request from Mr. Ballinger to lay this matter over for 2 weeks. That brings us to August 2nd. All right, is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is laid over to August 2nd. Item 28 is Resolution 23-1073, approving the ballot question title and language to be presented to the voters and directing the appropriate officials to take all necessary steps to place the ballot question on the November 7th, 2023 general election ballot.
All right, and I believe Mr. Peterson, is there a staff report on this item? Yes. I looked it up today and now I can't remember. Welcome.
Hello. There's a resolution in front of you for a sales tax. As I came up to you for the update for the end of legislative session, there's bridges added to this resolution that it is street and bridges improvement. And there's also an ability for the council to ask one question here. And so that's what you see in front of you. I'm sure you can read it all, so I can stand for any questions for that. So,
All right. Just making sure. I do appreciate the report that you gave us earlier this summer, and seeing if there's any questions. It looks like there's none. Thank you. All right. So, Ms. Prince.
So I did have a few questions about what we passed at the legislature, and also just because this is a big issue, we're going to be voting on ballot language. I want to understand two things, and I'm not sure if Eric, you would be the right person, or who would be, but I'm trying to understand the use of bonding with the sales tax, what our plan is as far as when would we bond, and I have some clarifying questions on a number of things, so maybe if you can speak to that, or
I'm going to let Director Kershaw and Director Rodriguez maybe address that question for you.
Yep, thank you.
Council President, Councilmember Prince, there's currently no plans to use bonding for the projects. For a number of reasons, it's not financially favorable. It is common in these types of capital projects to include the ability, especially when it's over 20 years, to include the ability to bond if needed. But there are no plans right now to use bonding as a part of the sales tax projects.
Okay, so in other words, the sales tax funding as it comes in will go toward, say, 1/20th of the amount of work that needs to be done each year on the basis of the priorities of the street maintenance, street reconstruction or street maintenance.
Council President, Councilmember Prince, the sales tax, if passed here and if approved by voters, would go into effect April 1st of next year. That's when the rate would change. At that time, the state would start collecting revenue and they would forward that revenue to the city. It's my understanding, I don't want to speak for Director John McCarthy, but we would maintain a cash account as that builds up while we get ready to do projects. We would have the ability to, how many projects we would do and when we would do them would be a function of the cash we have and when we think we could deliver them. It wouldn't necessarily be 1/20th of the 700 million or so over the 20 years. We will build up enough cash in the early years that's one of the reasons we won't need to bond, that we'll have cash on hand to do the projects.
Okay, that helps. And then I just wondered, just so that the public understands, I had asked you the other day if you could share with us the map of what projects will be done using the sales tax, so that people realize that we're going to continue to do residential streets through our RSVP program, which is paid for out of the property tax.
Council President, what's the magic word?
That you would like to use the overhead projector.
I would like to use the overhead projector.
Voice-activated overhead projector.
I would like to use the voice-activated overhead projector. There we go. Thank you, Council President. This is the map, and it's really the same map this map was developed in January. This is what we've shared with you before. This is what we shared with legislators when they asked. And the intent would be to do, these are the projects that we would still intend to do, going forward. We've not yet determined the order or the exact scope of work for each of them, but in most cases, they'd be full reconstructions.
Great. I just want to make that clear because I do think that when I'm talking to people, they say, oh man, if our streets can all get fixed, it's worth the sales tax. And it may well be, but people need to understand that these are the specific arterials and collectors that we are going to be using the funds for.
And Council President, Councilmember Prince, I've been reminded before that just because we've talked about things, it's different when you're at the podium. That is correct. We are going to be very careful to be transparent and accountable for these funds. These funds will not be used to supplant other projects or other work. And so the RSVP project that you mentioned, we're still quite honestly looking for funding to do more of that. This would have no impact. It wouldn't slow that down or speed it up. But the funds will be used for the parks activities and the public works activities that have been identified.
And then the 20 or 30 some million that we were collecting through right-of-way assessments will stay in the general fund. Is that right? All the street maintenance in terms of street sweeping and plowing and lights and so forth.
Yeah, Council President, Councilmember Prince, we're in the process of putting the budget together for next year. That we'll talk about those in more detail. But this would not change. I mean, we still have a great need to spend more money in the case of public works on street maintenance. So it wouldn't supplant those. It wouldn't be used to take away from those.
So in terms of voting for the sales tax, it will do those projects that we have been unable to do and that we don't have a source for, but it will not reduce property taxes that people are currently paying for. The things that we fund through the property tax will continue to fund through the property tax.
Council President and Councilmember Prince, I don't want to overcommit beyond my scope. But okay. There'll be a direct line between the sales tax money that comes in and these projects. What happens with property taxes in any form will be what the mayor proposes and you ultimately discuss and approve.
But part of the issue is that these are capital projects and we can't use the sales tax for ongoing maintenance. Is that right?
Council President, Councilmember Prince, right. The sales tax can't and won't be used for ongoing maintenance, street sweeping, patching, things like that, correct?
Okay. I think that's fine. I think I have the same questions for Mr. Rodriguez in terms of what we're planning to do with the portion that's going to be used for parks and rec.
And I think what I'm also hearing, what maybe taking from this conversation is the beauty of the allocated funds for these new necessary projects as it relieves the pressure from our general fund so we don't have to split the money between the new projects and the maintenance projects, but we can focus these dollars here. And of course there'll be, some spent, but the need is so great. But this takes some of the pressure off of our general fund and allows us to do the maintenance that we need to do. I just want to, and I see Ms. Naker has a hand up, but I just want to also remind us that we're talking about approving the ballot question title and language. And after we approve that, we do have a period of time where we will be focused on education and outreach and making sure that folks are, fully aware of what we're bringing forward. Our role in our council roles, that is our job, is to make sure that people know what is in front of them and what we're voting on this matter. So we do that. That is also forthcoming today. We're very focused on the title and the language presented to the voters. Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. Just first of all, I do have a question for Mr. Kershaw, but I want to start by saying that I will be voting yes on this resolution in front of us today. I am extremely grateful to the mayor for his leadership on attacking an issue that should have been tackled long ago and coming up with an innovative solution to do it that does not only rely on St. Paul residents and businesses. So just to put that out there, but I do think, to Ms. Prince's point, this is a great educational opportunity right here, and there are conversations that have not been had publicly that need to be had publicly. So for example, Mr. Kershaw, one question I've gotten that I think is important to clarify is there are county-owned roads and bridges, or in some cases state-owned roads and bridges that are included in the list of projects that we put before the state. And I want to hear from you on the record. It's important to me that these new dollars do not supplant state or federal or county spending, and that in any cases where we're doing work on county or state roads, that those costs are being fully made up for in other ways. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, President, Councilmember Naker, these funds, there are a few segments here. Shepherd Road downtown is one. There's a couple parts of, I think, Como and Maryland that are county-owned, and I may have that wrong. There's short segments within that. We do cost participation with the county all the time. So even improvements on their roads, we help to pay for. So we're used to these types of financial relationships with the county. But the bottom line is that these funds, if we're doing work on a county road segment, the goal would be to have the county help pay for that part of it or work out a transfer that allows that. I won't say it'll never be $1 because maybe some of these might be as simple as a bump out and we just want to pay for it and get it done to help address safety. But the intent is not to do work on MnDOT bridges, or county roads to any significant effect.
Thank you.
And then you had questions for Mr. Rodriguez, you said, Ms. Prince?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Council President Bremo and council members, your question was specific to bonding?
Bonding. And also, I do need to understand, we spoke on, I think it was Monday, about the way the 236 million breaks down. And one of the things that we all know as the council is that we have a $100 million deferred maintenance hole that we need to fill. So my question about that is, are we limited on being able to use these funds for deferred maintenance throughout our system? I mean, are we talking about this money for a few projects, or is this for our entire system? Because the $100 million is our entire system.
Correct. Council President Bremo and Councilmember Prince, it is for the entirety of the system, utilizing our previous reports that you all know well of, the Amoresco report and critical infrastructure needs and repairs across the entirety of St. Paul within the park system for that $100 million. Okay,
so so we can do things like replace roofs and gym floors and...
Correct. So for example, in your ward, we would be able to infuse about $4 million in the span of 2 years for any park-related buildings, passive parks that need improvements.
And that wouldn't be precluded by state law that sales taxes can't be used for maintenance. Okay, good. The other question I have is, as you know, as all of us know, I think, the city at some point started closing rec centers and leasing them to other organizations. We originally had 42. We got down to 26 because the city just could not afford to operate and maintain 42 buildings. And now what we're looking at, because when we build new facilities or the facilities we have, regardless of how they get built, operations and ongoing maintenance come out of the general fund, if I'm understanding what we're talking about here. And so in the resolution that we're passing, we are proposing to use sales tax funds for the river balcony, for the river classroom. We've talked about being able to replace some rec centers with it. And there's been talk of and I don't know if it's in the resolution, but a multi-sport athletic complex in the city. And what I'm concerned about is that adding those important new capital projects puts us back in the position of needing to increase our general fund to pay for staffing and maintenance, which has been our perennial problem, I believe, going back to the 80s. So I just wonder how we're going to not have that happen when we build when we increase our inventory of beautiful and expensive facilities, how we're going to continue to fund them.
Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Prince, I'm going to break that up into two segments. Looking at the city-owned rec centers, specifically using North End and Frogtown as the most recent examples, is when we do build those, we obviously have to build in the staffing to run them, and then in addition, the behind-the-scenes maintenance associated with that. So when we built Frogtown, we added in FTEs for pipe fitters and plumbers and other positions that are essential to keep that building up to the caliber that it needs to be.
Into the general.
Into the general fund, correct.
So it's a increase in property taxes for a new facility.
It is something that we work through every budget cycle or every time a new building is coming in, and what it needs to be successful and work behind the scenes. I will say for the River Learning Center and the River Balcony project, which are very larger in scale capital projects, I've been on the record in saying that we will not use the entirety of sales tax to fund those projects, but we may advance some design and further engineering to get to construction documents and maybe look at other private fundraising or other means. But specific to maintenance of those, I would expect, using the River Learning Center as an example, that we'll have a tenant in that building. They may have some share in that maintenance responsibility and what that ultimately will entail in terms of outcome. Same thing with River Balcony, with River's Edge next door, and all these other stakeholders involved, that we're probably looking at some form of maintenance agreement amongst other agencies in cooperation with parks. All that to say, I don't think it will be entirely on us for those two specific projects, but there may be some infusion of additional FTEs or somewhere down the line.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the question about bonding. Will parks be bonding for building new facilities?
Yeah, I would say we're not going to bond. We're not going to bond for deferred maintenance, obviously, but for any additional capital projects, I'd say we're very much in the mix for that. Just to my previous statement, we might look at bonding for future River Learning Center phases or River Balcony phases, but sales tax is a means to help accelerate those projects, as an example.
Okay, and then this will also effectively be taking parks out of the CIB process going forward? The capital improvement budget process.
Councilmember Brenmo and Councilmember Prince, I think it's premature to say that we'd be fully taken out of that process. I think it may free up some opportunity across the city to reallocate different priorities, given that parks will have some dedicated funding, but I don't want to say fully that we'd be out of that mix.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's it for now.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Kershaw or Mr. Rodriguez? Mr. Lally?
No, I was just going to move approval. But if there are no more questions, then, or if there are questions, we can wait.
Does anyone have comments that are not questions, things that they would like to share on this? Ms. Prince?
I would like to move an amendment. I circulated it to all of you. It's in version 2 on Legistar, and it just amends the ballot language, first of all, to say that a vote yes means that these costs will be funded through the new 1% sales and use tax, raising the 2024 sales tax in St. Paul to a total of 9.875. And then, so I'm adding in the language about stating what the total sales tax will be. And then a vote no means that the majority of these costs, and then I'm amending, of approved projects may need to be funded by other local revenue sources, which may lead to an increase in property taxes. So I'd like to move that amendment and ask for your consideration.
All right, so you have that. It looks like as version 2 in Legistar.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion on Ms. Prince's motion? All right. I will not be voting in support of this. I think the language is fine. This reminds me of a Chuck Rupke move where we're adding information that I think makes things more complicated. So I will not be supporting this. Any other comments? Ms. Prince?
If I could just speak to that, I really feel the language as it is, which conveys the idea that if you don't support this, I mean, there's likely to, these projects will be paid for primarily through an increase in property taxes. So I think that the voters seeing the juxtaposition of the increased sales tax and an increase in property taxes if they vote against it it's a false dichotomy. The taxes may go up. We may find, again, depending on how federal funding goes, how state funding goes, that we would not need to use sales tax funds or property taxes to pay for these projects. So I feel that my suggestions are, my amendments make it more transparent and not less.
I disagree, but thank you for clarifying. Any other thoughts? Ms. Jalali?
I will be voting against the motion. I guess I would just echo, I feel the existing language we have is clear, it is sufficient, and I worry that in this conversation we're getting a step ahead and doing advocacy beyond like the step that we're in, which is actually we just need to approve language so that that discussion in a forum outside of this body can begin. All the points can be made in the context of an election. So I support the current language we have, and I simply want to advance this step so that we can get to the part where everyone can talk about what it means. So I guess we can take a roll call or hover, because I'm not voting yes either. Thank you.
Any other discussion on version 2? All right, seeing none, all in favor? Well, I guess seeing none, roll call.
Ballinger,
No.
Jalali,
No.
Naker,
No.
Prince,
Yes.
Tolbert,
No.
Yang,
No.
Council President Brenmo.
No.
1 in favor, 6 opposed, being council members Ballinger, Jalali, Naker, Tolbert, Yang, and Council President Brenmo. The amendment fails.
All right,
Motion to
so,
approve.
so there's a motion to approve item number 28. Any discussion? There's a motion to approve version 1 as the version 2 failed. Any discussion on Mr. Tolbert's motion? Ms. Prince?
I will be voting no because of a lot of concerns I have going forward. I'm concerned about the due diligence that the city has done on determining what the impact is going to be on local business. Also, it presumes on average a $50 million, it's $1 billion over 20 years, which presumes $50 million a year on coming in on sales tax. And I think we haven't adequately studied those projections, which may or may not be accurate. And if we bond for projects and we don't have adequate sales tax to cover the bonding payments, then that will come out of the property tax. I'm not opposed to a sales tax out of hand, but I'm concerned about the level of capital improvements that we are proposing to get done, that we will have. We talk about tails and how we're going to maintain and operate things in the future, and I think we're looking at that here as well. So I'll be voting no.
All right. Ms. Yang, then Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. I would like to share that I feel our city has a lot to offer. I see all the time, through the sound variances that we pass, the festivals, the concerts that happen here in our city, the different landmarks and diversity that is here to offer. We really have a lot to offer, and again, we have seen over and over how we lack the proper investments to continue pouring into our city's great features and to uphold the infrastructure that would allow us to safely and properly navigate our home of St. Paul. And so I believe that there's really something that every resident and also visitor of our capital city, everything that they they can contribute to sustain our city here. And one thing that I've heard really loud and clear is the interest in making sure that, again, non-St. Paul residents are really contributing to our city. There's so much that they also offer, but again, there are also properties that are tax exempt too, and so we are a really unique city, and I think that this is a really great proposal that encompasses a great plan to ensure that our city's streets and infrastructure can continually be improved for our own safety and enjoyment, not just now, but also for the future. So I will be supporting version 1.
Thank you. Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. As I mentioned earlier, I'm strongly supportive of this resolution, and I look forward to voting yes. I just want to raise one comment that has come up when I've been talking to members of the public who have asked questions about this, and it's something that Ms. Yang just referred to. I think there's a basic sense of fairness that is behind this resolution. So the sense that people who use our roads and use our parks should help contribute to their upkeep, and that's what a sales tax does. It has also raised questions about tax-exempt institutions and reminded me of our conversation about payment in lieu of taxes, which this council authorized a study on several years ago. It's something that I think is worth continuing to explore, and something that, as we have this conversation about fairness, I think is also an endeavor that I'm interested in restarting and having that conversation. So I just wanted to share that as something that I've already heard from folks aligned with this initiative. And again, I'll be voting yes.
Great. Any other thoughts? Mr. Tolbert.
Yeah, I said this, I think, at a previous meeting, but I just want to, again, appreciate the legislature for giving us this opportunity to have this conversation with voters, as is very evident by how many cities and towns across the entire state were seeking sales tax authorizations. It's one of the issues with trying to manage the finances of a city that is so reliant just on property taxes. And as the announcement a couple weeks ago from Public Works that we're going to skin patch the entire city because the potholes are so bad, or anybody who just, quite frankly, drives anywhere knows the dilapidation of our roads over the years. This might not be the best way to fund it, but it's the best way I've heard. And until someone brings an alternative proposal that is going to fund the necessary investment in all of our roads for the long term, and other deferred maintenance projects that we've had, I think that we should put this forward and let the voters have this conversation. I think they, like everyone at this council, would like to see this investment in our roads, but we'll find out when that happens. But I'll be supporting this, and I again thank the legislature and the mayor's office for their work on getting this to this point so we can have this question.
I appreciate that, and I jotted down the same, just underscoring the appreciation to the mayor's office, to our state legislative delegation from St. Paul, as well as the entire DFL delegation for allowing this opportunity to bring this question to our voters. We share concerns about property taxes all the time when we talk about the budget, and this is a way that we can move forward with important investments and take some of the pressure off of our general fund budget so that we can keep up with our maintenance. So I am supporting this, and I am looking forward to the education and outreach that will come after today's vote. On this item, I believe we can just do all in favor. So there's a motion from Mr. Tolbert remains. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
6 in favor, 1 opposed, being Councilmember Prince. The resolution is adopted. Item 29 is first reading and final adoption of ordinance 23-37, approving an emergency ordinance schedule of penalties for noncompliance of outdoor watering restrictions.
All right, and I believe we have a representative from Water here to tell us what's going on. Welcome.
Thank you, Council President and council members. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to describe some of the activities that are underway for drought planning.
Could I interrupt you and have you introduce yourself, please?
Introduction?
Yeah, just let us know who you are.
Yes, I'm Todd Blomstrom. I'm the Distribution Division Manager for St. Paul Regional Water, and with me.
And Rich Rowland, Assistant Distribution Division Manager.
So we'd like to provide some information on a few key items that we're working on at St. Paul Regional Water to respond to potential drought conditions. One of them is to describe why these proposed activities are necessary that are for your consideration today. There are 3 phases that are really key to our customers in terms of triggering limits that might restrict water consumption for some of those customers, and then describe the overall strategies that we're attempting to implement to work with our customers to respond to those potential phases of drought. So with me, Rich Rowland has done a lot of planning and preparation for our drought process, and I'm going to turn it over to him. He has some slides to present to you today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council members, the 2023 drought response plan is based upon a DNR drought matrix that was established about approximately 1990 based on previous droughts. St. Paul Regional Water is required to comply with the Minnesota statewide drought plan. As you can see in this matrix, based on certain parameters such as river flow, the St. Paul Regional Water Services in the city must meet certain, I'll call it demand thresholds. This plan provides framework for preparing and responding to droughts to minimize conflicts and negative impacts on Minnesota's natural resources as well as the economy. To kind of further explain exactly where we're at and kind of our rate, I provided a chart as in addition to a table. Currently, we're at a drought watch phase. On the bottom left is the river gauge that we monitor at Brooklyn Park, and that's the river gauge that basically triggers the action levels in accordance to the Minnesota drought plan. 2,000 for under 2,000 cubic feet for 5 days is the threshold to enter that drought warning phase. With under 1,500 for 5 consecutive days is the restrictive phase. And I'll go on later exactly illustrating our plan for each one of those phases. As mentioned, each part of those associated phases and plans is we had to meet a certain demand threshold. And the DNR uses the winter levels of our pumping and consumption as that base level. So we've been monitoring our associated pumpage, and as you can see in this chart, we're monitoring exactly how close we are to those certain thresholds. Lastly, just to relay potential next steps, just a good graphic element exactly where we're at and what's the possible additional steps. At this point, if we do enter the drought warning, we do have a requested voluntary odd even with a requirement of odd even like we did a couple of years ago. In addition, if we didn't meet those certain goals, there is additional outdoor watering schedules such as 1 day a week, in addition to a total outdoor watering ban and non-essential watering ban. Those final 2, though, are in additional phases that we are after the drought warning. So this slide here kind of gives you exactly what those actions would be for each, we'll call it for each level that the state has defined. So right now, again, we're under the drought watch. The next step would be the drought warning, and that would be if the river is under 2,000 cubic feet per second for 5 consecutive days. As you can see where we were previously, or I'm sorry, currently, we're at 2,750 right now. The next one would be that drought warning. We would need to meet the reduction goal of 50% above January levels, which is at 53 million gallons a day that we were pumping at our associated plant. That would come in effect when the river is under 2,000 cubic feet a second for 5 consecutive days. We would request voluntary measures, and if voluntary, with those voluntary restrictions, if we can get compliance to that 50%, then we would lead to required restrictions, such as an odd even we discussed before. Finally, with the restrictive phase, that is based on 1,500 cubic feet a second, which that goal at 25% January level. And the emergency phase is when the river becomes under 1,000 cubic feet a second. That ever did happen. The state does have a drought task force that does meet and gives further, I'm going to call it direction to municipalities. The Corps, for example, gets involved. It's a very, there's a lot more that goes in that associated phase that I will not be able to cover in the bucket here. Lastly, in order to, to support and make sure we meet these goals that the state does require, we are requesting actions such as putting penalties in case we didn't have compliance. As you can see, the first violation is an educational notice. Second notice is a written warning. Third violation, the $50. Fourth violation is $100. And fifth would be all additional violations, $150 plus a water shut off to the property. Based on our experience just a couple of years ago, I believe the furthest we got was a third violation. So I do not expect to see this progression, but it is there for a tool if needed. If council members, if you have any questions, Todd and I will be able to answer them.
Great. Are there questions? Ms. Prince?
Yeah. We did not get a copy of the PowerPoint in our materials, and it might just be good to add it to Legistar for anyone who wants to access it. But I wondered how, I did hear about that we were going to be acting on this today on the radio, so you've done good work getting it out to the media. And I'm just wondering how you're planning to convey it to everybody so we get compliance. I really appreciate that the voluntary compliance is our first step, and that last year, was it last year when we did it, this, or a couple of years ago? I recall, as you said, we only got to level 3. So, but just how are we going to get the word out to our communities?
Sure, Council President Bramwell and Councilmember Prince. We are really pushing to try and engage the media. Just yesterday afternoon, Rich did an interview with WCCO. We're pushing on our social media platforms to get it out to the community as much as we can. And we're getting a lot of traction. I will just add comments to what Rich had explained. We really have had good support from our customers. Rich mentioned the thresholds were about 4 million gallons a day off from meeting that first threshold. So that's not a huge reduction for us. It's not a terrible stretch. If we could get a lot of voluntary compliance and everyone could just curb the water consumption, mainly the outdoor water use, I think we can hit those thresholds fairly easy.
Great, thank you.
And we always say we can help. We'll
Yeah,
share it with our
yeah,
networks, and the city will as well. I think we all recognize that we're in a drought situation, so I felt that this has been inevitable. I keep crossing my fingers for more rain. I heard it last night, but we will also share the news and information and make sure that folks know where we're at. And I think the best graphic is the dial that shows, kind of where we are on the continuum and where we could be headed. So I appreciate that in the presentation very much. Other questions or thoughts, Ms. Yang?
Thank you, Todd and Rich. I also want to say thank you for coming to do the staff report. I think this is a really great opportunity for all of us and the community to be educated about the drought response plan. We all use water every day, but we're not the ones working behind the scenes and regulating it too. So again, it's a huge, it's a very important thing for us to be educated on. And I feel like in the past couple of years when this vote did come up in front of the council, you all did a really great job just delivering on making sure that information is translated to different communities and closing the language barrier gap. So in our last water board meeting, I did make that same request for you all to continue doing that. So thanks for your work in making sure that the information is accessible and shared out to all communities in St. Paul.
Other thoughts? All right, this, my friends, is an emergency ordinance, so we do not need to have a second reading, public hearing, and a third reading, and we vote on it today. So we will, I will take that motion from Vice President of the Water Board, Ms. Yang. Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, Ms. Yang moves to close the hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the ordinance is adopted. Item 30 is final adoption of ordinance 23-30, amending the Ford Site Highland Bridge zoning and public realm master plan to accommodate a proposed project by the University of St. Thomas.
Mr. Tolbert.
Yeah, and I just have a slight amendment to this, and I'll move version 3. It's in there. All it does is it narrows some of the standards to the Highland Bridge site, or this site of the area, and then on number 31, lay that over because it has more citywide effects, and I know PED and DSI wants to do a little more public outreach on the citywide effects of that. So I will move version 3 and lay it over for final adoption next.
Okay. Okay, and my understanding was that this one was, we could
we're going to move it to version 3 and lay it over.
Lay it
to
over.
final
Okay,
adoption
got you.
next week.
All right. So there's a motion from Mr. Tolbert to move version 3 and lay over the matter for 1 week. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The ordinance is amended and laid over to July 26 for final adoption. Item 31 is final adoption of ordinance 23-31, amending Legislative Code Chapter 63 pertaining to off-street parking facility standards and design.
And on this item, the layover request is to October 4th?
Correct.
All right, so Mr. Tolbert moves the layover to October 4th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The ordinance is laid over to October 4th. Item 32 is first reading of ordinance 23-35, granting the application of NP 328 LLC to rezone the property at 898 Raymond Avenue for RM2 multiple family residential to T2 traditional neighborhood and amending Chapter 60 of the Legislative Code pertaining to the zoning map.
And my understanding is we have a brief staff report on this item. Welcome.
Hello, Council President Bren Moen, council members. I'm Anthony Jervy. I'm a principal city planner in the Department of Planning and Economic Development. I would like to use the overhead projector for this. This site is, this application is to rezone 898 Raymond Avenue from RM2 to T2 to allow for commercial use of allow for continued commercial use as a conforming use. The site is on Raymond Avenue and Long Avenue. It's a small parcel here at the corner. And here's another shot of the exterior of the building. It's a mixed-use building. It has 600 square feet of commercial on the first floor, 3 units above on the second floor. It was originally built in 1917 as a mixed-use building, as a bakery with residential above. The block that it's on, so this block face here along Raymond Avenue, was originally zoned commercial in 1922 and was rezoned to RM2 in 1975. So since 1975, it's been operating as a non-conforming use. And there's currently T2 on the other corner of the block. The Planning Commission found that the application met the required findings for rezoning, including conformance with the comprehensive plan, consistency with how the area has developed, compatibility with the neighborhood, and they found that T2 is appropriate for this pedestrian-friendly area and would support the existing building density. For these reasons, both the Zoning Committee and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the rezoning, and there were 2 letters at the Zoning Committee public hearing in opposition to the rezoning, and no letter from District 12. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thanks for the report. Are there any questions on this item? Mr. Lally.
Thank you. So that I understand, is the rezoning connected to a redevelopment of that building, or can you, I just missed that part. I think my brain's just kind of slow. It's been a long day. Could you explain what the rezoning is meant to, like, what's the applicant hoping to do?
Yes, President Bren Moen, Councilmember Jalali. The intent is to make it easier to rent out the existing commercial space. So right now it's a non-conforming use. It's zoned RM2. It only allows residential uses by right. So for the commercial use to operate, it operates as a non-conforming use. The most recent non-conforming use was a salon. Yeah. So if another salon wanted to go in there, it's a relatively easy process. But anytime they'd want to change that into a different, like, office use or something else that's commercial, they would have to go through a non-conforming use permit process through the Planning Commission. So for those reasons, it makes it difficult for the owner to reuse and give any kind of certainty to potential tenants.
Thank you. So to confirm my understanding, the building is staying the same. They want to allow more uses within the same existing building. Any business that came into there would still have to go through things like getting their business license or whatever other eligible codes. But it's just, this is about setting the zoning to to adjust to what's actually there. Is that roughly correct?
Right, it would
Or
allow
I dare
the-
say even actually correct?
Yeah, it would make the
Yes.
zoning kind of match the
Yep.
the use, and then allow for more commercial uses that would be able to open up shop there.
Thank you. That's so helpful. It's just for my understanding, and sounds reasonable, and appreciate you coming here to explain all this to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I appreciate the clarifying question, Ms. Jalali. I was looking at the picture, I'm like, I think I know where that is, but recognizing that there's been a lot of changes that have happened around the building since it probably originally got the exceptions, and sometimes we got to catch up with the underlying zoning, so I appreciate the information very much. All right, so this item is this our public hearing on? No, this is our first reading on this item. So we will lay the matter over for 1 week to public hearing.
This item is laid over to July 26th. Item 33 is a public hearing of ordinance 23-27, amending Chapter 142 of the Legislative Code pertaining to a special service district in downtown.
All right, and this is, it looks like we had this last week. I was not here, so the public hearing is laid over. Can we get a quick staff report or update from, and is that necessary from Mr. Spencer? Or is- I don't know,
I'm not sure if that's necessary. If we
Okay,
just open it.
okay. Having not been here last week, I was not sure. Okay, got you. All right, so this is a public hearing. We will hear from people who would like to speak on this item. We have 2 minutes on the clock for folks who want to testify. And if you could just begin by saying your name, where you live, and then get into your testimony. There's a clock in front of you and a clock in front of me, and I'll let you know when you're about 10 seconds to wrap up. I will remind folks what I said at the beginning of this meeting, and that is the intention is to lay the public hearing over for 1 week. So if someone says something that you're just going to repeat what they're saying, or if you want to hold your powder and wait till next week, you can also do that. But that will be the intention at the end of this public hearing, to keep it open for 1 week. All right, so this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this matter?
Council President and council members, Dave Cassetta, 211 West 7th Street of Cassettas. First, I want to just compliment a gentleman that works in the city here who helped me a lot. It stuff was Brink Engelbrett with real estate and assessment manager in the financial services to provide me information that was necessary for us to try to understand this proposal. Public notice was received on Monday, July 10th. The public hearing being obviously today is July 19th. 9 days to assemble all property owners to communicate and meet regarding the new tax to potentially be enforced within a 3-block radius. We met yesterday, Tuesday, July 18th, with the St. Paul Downtown Alliance President Joe Spencer and Associates, because the majority of the landowners are not aware of the proposal and the details of the program. Some of us initially received a small presentation that a spokesman with information, quite frankly, was incorrect information. Myself received a map showing the area they were proposing on to receive a new map attachment with the public hearing in the notice in a different way. I was never informed the change or why. I understand the meeting is to be delayed over for 1 week, but I don't believe this is acceptable. But for the understanding of the information, this proposal actually, the formula is calculated. Since yesterday, Tuesday, July 18th, 2 large landowners have withdrawn their petitions. And as today, 1 more submitted a withdrawal of support. This changes the calculations for the number of property owners in support of the special district. Therefore, we need ample time to determine 2 things. 1, the formula to calculate percentage of properties in favor of the petition. And 2, the impact to the landowners that have just withdrawn their petition and how it impacts the formula, and determined to pass this proposal.
And Mr. Cosetta, your time is up.
Therefore, I respectfully request at least a layover till September so the landowners who are paying and being engaged in the process to understand what they are paying for. This is fair, especially for the landowners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And please sign in at the clipboard on the side of the podium. Anyone else on this item?
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Evening. Council President Brenwan, council members. My name is Bill Hosko, downtown retailer for 35 years. Address currently for one more week, I'll soon be leaving downtown, is 151 East 7th Street. This morning, I walked both sides of 7th Street downtown. I began at my business, which is at 7th Street and Jackson, and I went on the south side of it, along the south side east to Lafayette, and then I crossed the intersection, and then went along 7th Street, all the way through downtown, up to Grand Avenue. Cross the street again and work my way south back to Jackson, okay? I've been downtown, as I just mentioned, for 30 years. I said 35, I apologize. I've never seen such neglect as I've seen today. Nothing close to it in all these years. And this was just one street in downtown St. Paul. I photographed the neglect I saw. Tonight, I'll be putting a collage of it all together, and I'll make it available to you tomorrow and the public tomorrow as well. Councilmember Naker, a week ago I contacted you about the topic at hand today, and you did not reply. I sent you a copy today of my communications. Currently, your efforts to further partner with Joe Spencer of the Downtown Alliance is an exercise, in my opinion, meant to only expand your and his powers and your abilities to spend ever greater amounts of public money. In the past 10 years, our city budget has grown from $500 million to nearly $800 million today, if I'm correct. And your plans to raise the sales tax rate to highest in the state, I guess, will push our budget ever closer to $1 billion. This is St. Paul. The vast majority of neglect I saw this morning was on public property. Again, the vast majority of neglect I saw today was on public property. Wrap it up. That's real classy that you did that. Okay. This should be your focus rather than needlessly shaking down more property and business owners in this city for endless amounts of money. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else on this item? Right, and again, we will hold open the public hearing, so there'll be opportunity to weigh in again in a week. I think, as was mentioned, this is a voluntary program and initiative, and if the support's not there, the support's not there. So we'll give it some time, and here again with the public hearing next week with a motion from Ms. Naker to lay over. Any other thoughts? All right, so there's a motion to lay the matter over for 1 week with a public hearing open. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is continued to July 26. Item 34 is public hearing of ordinance 23-36, approving an extension of an interim ordinance requesting a planning commission study to undertake a zoning study of non-conventional residential housing unit products.
All right, is there a staff report on this item? I do not believe so. There was last week. It was good. All right, so this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, Ms. Naker moves to close the public hearing and lay the matter over for 1 week. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the ordinance is laid over to July 26 for final adoption. Item 35 is resolution public hearing 23-139, final order approving the Grand Snelling parking lot operation and maintenance costs for 2024.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Mr. Tolbert moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 36 is resolution public hearing 23-161, amending the financing and spending plan of the Department of Parks and Recreation in the amount of $4 million from a U.S. Department of Housing Urban Development grant for the North End Community Center project.
All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, I will move to close the public hearing and approve, and I appreciate we got a great staff report and comments last week, so I'll have to belabor that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 37 is Resolution Public Hearing 23-180, amending the financing and spending plans of the Department of Public Works capital budget for the 2018, 19, 20, and 21 sidewalk projects.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Ms. Prince moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 38 is Resolution Public Hearing 23-181, amending the financing and spending plans of the Department of Public Works capital budget for the Minnesota Street Phase 1 project.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Ms. Naker moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 39 is Resolution Public Hearing 23-185, adopting the 2024 operating plan for the Downtown Improvement District and imposing a service charge pursuant to Minnesota Statutes Chapter 428A.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? On this one, I had close. Hold open. Open and keep, Ms. Naker moves to hold open the public hearing and lay the matter over 1 week to July 26th. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is continued to July 26. Item 40 is Resolution Public Hearing 23-186, approving the application to Relinquit Cinema for a sound level variance in order to present amplified sound on July 29th, August 12th, and August 26th at Eastside Sculpture Park, 705 7th Street East.
I'm sorry. I did that to you, didn't I? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Ms. Prince moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 41 is Resolution Public Hearing 23-187, amending the 2023 ESG General Ledger budget to reflect the annual 2023 grant award of $587,737 and amending the ESG project bundle to include 2023 ESG spending and financing.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item, this cryptic item? All right, seeing none, Mr. Tolbert moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 42 is a Resolution Public Hearing 23-188, authorizing the Department of Parks and Recreation to amend the financing and spending plan in the amount of $68,767.50 for the Pedro Park project.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. I would move to close the public hearing, and also I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank park staff and real estate for the incredible work on taking down a very difficult to deconstruct building. Now that the building, Public Safety Annex, is down, expect announcements in the coming weeks about future development at the site.
All right. It is exciting and long time coming. So Ms. Naker has a motion to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 43 is Resolution Public Hearing 23-189, authorizing the Department of Parks and Recreation to amend the financing and spending plan in the amount of $305,000 for the West Minnehaha Recreation Center HVAC project.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Mr. Ballinger moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 44 is Resolution Public Hearing 23-191, approving the application of Kristen Carver and Francisco Ramirez for a sound level variance in order to present amplified sound on July 22nd at 1199 Midway Parkway, Como Midway Picnic Pavilion.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Ms. Jalali moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 45 is Resolution Public Hearing 23-192, approving the applications of the Minnesota United FC for sound level variance applications in order to present amplified sound on July 23rd and 27th within the street and beer garden area at Allianz Field, 400 Snelling Avenue North.
And this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Mr. Ballinger moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 46 is Resolution Public Hearing 23-193, amending the financing and spending plans of the Department of Parks and Recreation in the amount of $500,000 to reflect additional 2023 funding expected from Como Friends.
And this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Ms. Jalali moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Legislative hearing consent agenda items 47 through 64 are before you for your consideration.
Russell.
Wait.
Council President Brenmo and council members, could items number 48 and 56 please be read into the record separately?
48 and 56.
Thank you, yes.
Item 48 is RLH RR 23-28, ordering the rehabilitation or raising and removal of the structures at 1043 Beach Street within 15 days after the July 19th City Council public hearing.
Ms. Mormon.
Simple request for continuing the public hearing 1 week, please. 1 week.
For 1 week. Continuing public hearing for 1 week. It's a motion from Ms. Prince. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is continued to July 26. Item 56 is RLH TA 23-170, ratifying the appealed special tax assessment for property at 381 Ramsey Street.
Ms. Mormon.
Council President, council members, the tax assessment in front of you is a special assessment for a property cleanup. The total assessment is for $436. The cleanup order was issued on September 28th of 2022. It asked to please remove and properly dispose of all trash, tents, clothing, bedding, tarps, and other refuse from the southeast corner of the property. This summary abatement order for the cleanup was issued by Brian Genzel. He is the inspector who's assigned to the HART, or Homeless Action Response Team, at the Department of Safety and Inspections. They work obviously cross-departmentally. The work deadline was October 5th. Upon reinspection, the site was not cleaned up. Kamish Excavating was contracted to do the cleanup and did clean up the site on October 24th. The summary abatement order itself was not the result of a complaint that came into the police department or directly into the Department of Safety and Inspections, but rather was self-generated from the HART unit as a part of the work that they do with outreach with people in encampments, and these are the materials left at the encampment site. During the course of the hearing, we discussed how cleanups are triggered. If one calls the city, who is activated, how does that get handled, and so on. And I did have attached to the record in front of you a record of police calls to that particular parcel and intersection, so you could get a sense of what was happening. In the time period from the beginning of 2022 through late May of this year, there were, I believe, 8 calls, which might have been connected to the homeless encampment there. During that time period, the owner indicated maybe one or two or so of them are associated with him calling things in, but otherwise they were not. That's not the most high level that we've heard, but it is a site that has been known to have homeless encampments. Certainly the Hart file, DSI file, was opened in 2019, I think Inspector Yanarelli indicated, and the owner indicated that he has indeed had problems at this location since 1989 when he came in. So not a new issue. Hart opened a file, ordered the cleanup, did the cleanup. I understand the owner did talk back and forth with the Department of Safety and Inspections after the order was issued, and gave permission to access his land to do work. I think the matter at this juncture is whether or not the entire assessment should be paid by the property owner, or rather divided between the city and the property owner, and cut the assessment to reflect well, it would be treating the matter differently than the council has treated other similarly situated private properties where there have been homeless encampments. And we've seen a handful on the east side where we have had cleanup assessments appealed, and the council has held in those cases that the cost of cleaning up a property, whether it's from somebody dumping 6 tires there, or McDonald's wrappers, or in this case, tents and tarps, that is attached to the private property owner, or if it's in a city park, obviously the city owns it, it would be attached to the city and its responsibility to keep that parcel clean. So I applied that standard in making this recommendation to you.
A quick question. So this is a complaint that was initiated by the Hart team?
The Hart team was already doing work there, and so it was the inspector from that team who opened up the order. Sometimes you see orders opened up or issues opened up when a neighbor calls in, and it will say complaint generated, or it could say that an inspector found this, perhaps in doing other responsibilities. In this particular case, it was the inspector themselves as a part of their work in the Hart unit who generated this.
Okay. And I'm asking that just because I think some of the other examples that you've made it are neighbor generated, or generated by inspectors that are out in, maybe I called something in. But this is interesting because I think there's a distinction here. If our Hart team called it in, Hart team removed the folks in the encampment but left the stuff behind. So I wanted to make sure that that's what I heard you say.
That is what you heard me say, and that wasn't entirely clear in the hearing until the end when Inspector Yanarelli did say it was Inspector Brian Ganzel who wrote the orders, and that is Brian Ganzel, who is a part of the Hart team. Yep. So it was following their work.
I'm just asking because I think that there could be a distinction drawn between this type of removal and other types of removal. But so I appreciate that that information. Are there other questions from Ms. Mormond? Ms. Prince?
Well, I think I appreciate where you're coming from on this. The concern is, and I want to be consistent. So if we've passed these costs along in other cases, then I don't want to change it for this one. But I wonder if we shouldn't be revisiting this as a policy, because the nature of the things that are being cleaned up it's people's personal property. It might include hazardous materials, either health-wise or needles or whatever. It's really difficult refuse to pick up, that the average homeowner picking up McDonald's wrappers doesn't have to deal with that level of
Right, which is what
hazard.
I think that there's a distinction that could be drawn to create consistency. This is where I was going. Just so you know, we will have a public hearing. You look like you're itching to talk with us. We're just trying to get some information clear from Ms. Mormon, and then we'll call you up for the public hearing. Realize that most people have not been down here for this rodeo, so just so you know what's going on. Are there other questions from Ms. Mormon? Okay. So this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this matter, please come on up. And like other folks, if you could just introduce yourself. I think we know your address, but thanks for being here today.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Rulon Miller. I'm the owner of the house at 400 Summit, and I also own what I thought was 0 Ramsey Street. It's a pie-shaped wedge that goes down from my house to Ramsey. It's a very difficult piece of property because it's very vertical. But the house used to be owned by the Ordways, and when the Ordways owned that house, there was a garage that they had down there. So there is this flat level, probably for about a car and a half or something like that. And the thing that, the reason I sort of was asking for a shared expense here was because, I called the police, I can't remember how many times, she said 8. That seems high to me, but maybe I did. Often in the middle of the night, because there was a man down there who liked to play the drums and would wake me up early in the morning. And that's when I called. And as I remember, I don't think anything happened with the police. They stayed there, and over the course of 6 weeks or maybe 2 months, the encampment got bigger. I think there was 1 person to start with, and I think that by the end there may have been 4 or 5 people there, I'm not sure. Anyway, I felt like the police, if they had gotten rid of them the first time around, first of all, there wouldn't have been such the expense to clear it up. And I recognize that I do have some responsibility here, but I think the police also have some responsibility as well. And I thought it was a very fair offer on my part to split $400. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I appreciate you bringing it to our attention, and we appreciate it. Anything else you want to add?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes, there is something I'll
Sure.
add. They're back, just as of 2 days ago, and I called the police again. And they said that they're going to, and actually, I was referred also to someone who was, I'm not sure what the agency is. I was referred to someone else, and they said that they were going to take care of it. We'll see if that works.
Yeah. A quick question for you. I have a similar kind of property in my ward with a ravine and a little flat spot, and it is challenging. And so I've been through this with a community member before. One question I would have for you is, you recognize some responsibility just in terms of the lot. Do you have any ideas on what you could do to make it
one thing, of
less
course,
of a campground?
One thing, of course, would be to fence it off. But that's a big property, and, it's not that big, but it'd be a big expense because I'd have to go all the way down to Ramsey Street and then come up Ramsey Street to where Lookout Park is, the big wall there at the end of, right across the street from the University Club.
Is it developable at all? Is it developed? Could you develop it?
I bought that. I bought that piece of property from John Rupp, who I'm sure you all know, and part of the deal was that I cannot develop it because he wanted the people at the University Club to look out over woods instead of condos or whatever. So, and I was quite happy with that. I like having it natural. So that didn't bother me. So no, I can't develop it.
Right. So that's part of the challenge, is that you're opting to keep it a campground. It's a developable.
No, I'm not opting to keep it a campground. I'm not opting to keep it natural. Another problem with the fence is I only can go so far unless I go all the way up to Summit Avenue. And even then, someone can come through my yard and go down the hill instead of coming off the stairway that goes up and down the bluff there.
Okay.
And listen, I'm not trying to, create a home for the homeless people.
Right. I guess all I'm saying, sir, respectfully, is that if you hold the land open because you want to have a view of the woods, then there's an open piece of land that doesn't get as much eyes on and foot traffic. And so I appreciate you recognizing the role in making sure that it's cleared out and that you're reporting things. I do appreciate that.
Right. I'll just reiterate one more time. The longer that went on, the bigger the encampment got. Yeah. And if it had been addressed early, we wouldn't have had the expense.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Ms. Naker appears to have a question.
Thanks, Council President. I just wanted to go back, sir, to the question we had discussed earlier about hazardous materials within the encampment. Was there biomaterial or other things within the tents that were difficult to remove?
I was out of town when they came to remove it all. I have heard, I had a painter actually who's working on my house now who has found needles. This is up on my property at 400 Summit next to my garage. Whether there's any connection with those needles and who might have been down at the encampment, I don't know. But there is that sort of material around.
So the reason why you didn't heed the orders to remove all of the trash and tents by the date that the orders came was because of your feeling that it was not just because the police hadn't removed the original inhabitant, or is there another reason why you didn't comply?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure I knew that there was a deadline. I knew that I was supposed to get it off, and I'm on the road a lot for my business. I'm here, well, more now after COVID, but for a long time I was away for a third of the year.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ballinger moves to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails. Mr. Ballinger.
I walk through that area on my walks, and I notice it down the hill, and as you go down the Kellogg Hill and come back towards the hospital, there are often tents and encampments, and I would think when the people who were there were taken off, they should have taken their tent with them or should have them take their tent with them. I wouldn't send anyone to go take down someone else's tent. So I'm going to go along and split the fine.
All right. So your recommendation is to go half and half,
Yes.
recognizing with some responsibility. And I just think that there's a distinction here that I want to, I support your motion, but just reiterating that I think there is a distinction here when our HEART team is out working with humans in a situation like this, and the responsibility I think then lies for them to move along. And I do want you to keep that place cleaned up, but I do hear, once there's one and then there's two and then there's three, it becomes bigger and more challenging to close. So I appreciate that, and I would support your motion. Mr. Tolbert.
Yeah, I'm going to support this motion. I think, and I learned today that we've done this for others. I didn't appreciate that fact, that we find others, but when someone's dealing with encampments on their own property and then finding them after the fact, it doesn't pass the smell test to me. And the one thing, and I think we should bring the HEART team in and maybe revisit this policy and how they deal with this, so that we can be consistent going forward. And we just passed a substantial amount of money for the HEART team, basically. That could cover some of these costs, and then it doesn't put the hearing officer in a difficult position. But one of the things that I remember the HEART team often saying is when we close encampments, we take the belongings, we document the belongings, and we store the belongings. And so it's curious to me why, in this case, they left it, and not only left it, but wrote out a cleanup order for a property owner who, I wouldn't want an encampment. Like, I wouldn't want to have to clean up an encampment in my backyard. I know that. I think this is a fair compromise, and I appreciate the acknowledgement of the ownership of the property and responsibility, but it just feels like a lot for the property owner and not quite fair. So I think we should revisit this issue and maybe have the HEART team come explain their processes on this.
I appreciate that call to look at the policy and make some clarification as well. Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. I support the motion, and I agree with everything that's just been said. I just want to echo what Council President said earlier, sir, though, especially given that it seems like the problem is already recurring as we speak, that if we continue to have encampments on this property because of the way the property is, we're going to continue to be here. And whether you're paying the cost or we're paying the cost, it's public dollars going into this removal of these encampments. So we have a crime prevention through environmental design team in our police department that can come out and look at the property, make suggestions for changes. Maybe a fence isn't the only option. So I would just really encourage you to take advantage of those city services, because there may be ways to just not kind of continue being back here.
Those options, I did not know about those options, obviously, last year.
And I know Councilmember Ballinger is your council member and can help connect you, or any of us can. But.
Yeah, yep, because the ultimate goal is that there's not an encampment there, we all agree. All right, so there's a motion to amend the recommendation to a 50-50 split. Any further discussion on Mr. Ballinger's motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted as amended.
And if you haven't, yep, there you are. Great. Oh, look it, this brings us to the end of our agenda. I actually knew that. So before we adjourn, I will offer colleagues to take that moment to share. What? Oh, good heavens to Murgatroyd. The end, but not really the end, because we need to vote on the balance of the legislative hearing consent agenda moved by Ms. Yang to close the public hearings and approve as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the consent agenda is adopted as amended.
All right, so back to news or updates or information from your wards. Ms. Yang.
Thank you. I want to share that the Payne Phelan Community Cookout is happening this Saturday, July 22nd, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., and it'll be at the Phelan Park Pavilion. There will be free food and games for all ages, so it's a great opportunity to come out and meet neighbors in the east side.
Great. Other news? Ms. Prince, then Mr. Tolbert.
I have a couple of things. One, I just want people to know that National Night Out is going to be on August 1st, and there's still time to sign up your neighborhood to be a National Night Out stop. And you do that through the police department, I believe. Am I accurate there? Okay. And then the second thing, I don't know if any of you have had a chance to take part, but the Public Art St. Paul is putting on a 12-week festival of the work of 110 Minnesota-based artists throughout the Twin Cities. And so just look up their website and you'll be able to see where the installations are. There are also conversations that are scheduled at the Humanities Center. The artwork is based in a large part on Indigenous people around the theme of Dr. King's network of mutuality. It's a way of connecting our multicultural community. It also features art in places around the river. I'm particularly thrilled about it because the artwork that is on display at the Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary in the site of Wakan Teepee was done by Bobby Wilson, who, if you have ever watched Hulu's Reservation Dogs, which is a wonderful television program, it has done murals that are hanging down in that area. And those murals are going to be part of a public process of placing a mural by Bobby on the Mounds Boulevard retaining wall that you see when you go up Kellogg Boulevard. It's a huge canvas. So I encourage you to go to the Public Art St. Paul website and look up WACPA Triennial Festival. And it goes through September 16th. It's great.
Thank you. Mr. Tolbert?
Yeah, this Saturday, 11 o'clock, Assembly Union Park will be opening officially, which is probably the park that most people under the age of, we'll say 12, have probably been excited about, and maybe some of the pickleball players. I know that Ward 5 has some great pickleball players, but the first official pickleball court is opening in St. Paul with the pickleball court at Highland Bridge. as well as this giant slide that I know kids in my household and other kids have been waiting to open up, basketball courts and many other things. So I truly invite the public, but also my colleagues who were a big part of making this happen. It would be great to have you and your families there at 11 o'clock on Saturday if you want to open up a great park with a big slide.
Sounds awesome. Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President, and thanks to Council President for the bring this to my attention. This is really exciting this Saturday from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. So right after the opening, you can come on over to Union Depot for the Food Truck Festival. There are going to be 60-plus food trucks, so something for everyone, and that's about all I have to say about it, but that's about all you need to say. So I hope to see you there.
Go to the farmer's market, wander over. Sounds great. And I will add that every Wednesday in Rice Park in the summer is also food trucks, so we should remember that and go visit them. Any other news from the wards? All right, perhaps people are headed to Groovin' in the Garden. I don't know. It's happening right now at Como Park. If there's nothing else to come before us, we're adjourned.